Good morning. What's up, you guys? Hi. And we're live.
You want to sit down here? Bring your breakfast here? Yeah?
So guys, I am waiting for a few more of you to roll on into this live. I posted this morning that we were doing a live as a family today. And we obviously normally post our videos on Tuesdays, but it was really important to me to participate in Blackout Tuesday yesterday and really more so put towards the information that we're needing right now to support the Black community. So, I see that you guys are here. Thank you guys for joining us. This means so much to me. I see that so many of you guys are on here. And so this is All Things Adrienne Live, and for me, you can't watch a show called All Things Adrienne without knowing all the things that rest heavy on my heart and my mind at night, and without knowing all the people that make me who I am as well. So that's why it was really important for me to have my family be a part of this. As some of you may not know, they actually RV'd all the way from New York so that we could quarantine and be together. And obviously so much has happened since then. So I'm gonna just introduce you to my family in case you don't know who they are. Adrienne over here. This is my husband, Israel.
Hello.
This is my niece. What's your name?
Jet.
Jet Marie. This is my sister, Claudette.
Claudette.
My brother-in-law, Jerd Alexander. I was going to give you your full name, middle, and everything. And what's your name?
Say it loud. What's your name?
Bow.
That's Bo Harper. This is my mother, Nilda. Felt like I should put that Spanish on there.
Nilda.
Hit you with that Nilda. And this is my Papa Joe. As you can see, you guys, we are a multicultural family, and we celebrate that. And I think that regardless of that, we should be having these conversations in our home, and we have been having these conversations around this island here in the kitchen. And I really wanted to do this hopefully to inspire, to encourage you to have these same conversations in your home about the racial injustice that is currently happening in our world. So I know that there are going to be comments on here. We are going to be answering those. But for me, the first thing I knew I wanted to tackle when I came on here was discussing the Black Lives Matter movement and why it is that it was important and significant to me to post that on All Things Adrienne's Instagram. I have to give a huge shout out and love to my King community family who helped me run that page. Obviously, I run both of my businesses and I also have my own personal page. But when I realized that we hadn't posted there, it was really important to me that we speak our hearts and our minds. And you can't have a YouTube platform and not use it. That's just how I feel. So for me, it's important to use my platform to get my voice out there so that you guys can hear what I feel, what's on my heart, and where I stand. So I hashtag Black Lives Matter, and there was people on there that came back and said all lives matter. So that was the first thing I wanted to tackle on here, was why that's important to me, what the Black Lives Matter movement is about, and why it's offensive and there's another word that I'm looking for. Somebody help me. What's the word? Why it's not okay to say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. As a family, guys, we've been having these conversations, so everybody's just kind of going to chime in. And we've been following people like Carl Lentz and seeing memes that help us explain why Black Lives Matter is important. I'm going to let Jared take over.
Yeah, so I guess in my view, when you rebut or appear to rebut all lives matter with Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, it seems to devalue the issue at hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? By saying Black Lives Matter, it's very important that people understand that we're not saying that Black Lives Matter more,
Correct.
or that only Black Lives Matter, but rather there is an acknowledgement that there is a problem with respect to how Black people in particular.
I don't want you guys to miss this, so I know that you guys are saying you can't hear him because he's too far. Can you help me open this to bring it over? Again, I don't really care about the production. Don't care about the production of this video. For me, it's about the message. So I'm gonna bring the camera on over so that we can
All right.
have this conversation. You can hear my brother. He
So
can
I'll
hold it.
just repeat myself just briefly. So I think to address your point, when people rebut Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter, it seems to devalue the issue at hand.
Correct.
And the issue at hand is that black people have suffered disproportionately at the hands of police brutality. We're not saying that Black Lives Matter more, not saying that only Black Lives Matter, right? We're just saying Black Lives Matter as well. Black Lives Matter too, right? And Carlin said something, and I've been trying to kind of like convey this in a way that people could understand and feel. And what I've been saying is, you don't go to an AIDS rally and say, well, what about, cancer, right? And Carlin's actually put it unbelievably eloquently. He said, anyone with a functioning brain understands that all lives matter.
Say that one more time.
Anyone with a functioning brain understands that all lives matter. But since when does focusing on one issue disparage another issue?
That's right.
Right? So I think it's important for us to be able to empathize with anybody. And another thing.
Anybody in any community
Sure.
and.
And there's another illustration.
Yeah,
that might
that's
be
the
on
one I
point.
put. If you follow me on all things Adrienne's Instagram, I had to defend my statement of Black Lives Matter and come on there and try to educate in the best way I could in the moment.
Right.
And we were like, okay, if you are on a street and your house is on fire, would you scream, all houses are on fire, and would you hose down all of the houses?
All houses matter.
All houses matter, sorry, yeah. All houses matter. Or would you just hose down the house that's actually on fire?
Right.
Like, let's use some common sense for this, you guys.
Right.
Obviously, we know that the constitution of our heart is that all lives matter. But that's not the concept of the movement. The concept of the movement is that right now we are focusing on the lives that are being oppressed, that are being brutalized, that are being, that are suffering from injustice. And that is the point. Like, I pray that you guys hear our hearts when we say this and that you open your mind
I think, isn't it?
to.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, go
I
ahead.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, babe,
I think this has become so politicized.
Yeah.
And it's become like a dividing line. Even COVID has become politicized. And I had a great call from a friend of mine yesterday who's a Jewish, beautiful man, great attorney, great music industry person, who literally answered the phone and he said, how do I talk to my 16-year-old about this? He didn't say, hi, Israel. He said, how do I talk to my kid about this? And I just said, let me tell you something. When they were shooting up synagogues a while back,
Yeah.
I didn't go on these people who were standing in solidarity with our Jewish brothers and sisters saying, yeah, but what about Black Lives Matter? What about, we're saying people who are being targeted and shot at
Deserve to get focused
deserve our
on-
focus. Why? Because we are still a part of one human race.
That's right.
Ultimately, you cut Jerd, you cut Mommy, you cut A, you cut me, you're going to find the same color blood bleeding. We are a part of one body. And this is not a religious statement. This is, we live on this earth together. And the idea that we're going to draw lines and make people less than or more than is the problem. So the fact that people have jumped on our pages and said, yeah, but all lives matter. Yeah, but all lives matter.
Yeah, but you missed the point.
Yeah, and all
is what I
lives
wanna
cannot
say.
matter until Black lives matter, until Jewish lives matter, till what, if people were
Asian
systemically
and
going
natives
after
and-
Asians right now and murdering them in the street on television, would we be saying, yeah, but blacks have been beaten down all this time? No, we would say, let's stand with our Asian brothers and sisters.
Correct.
I don't understand why this is so difficult for people, but I also do, because we have these really painful, divisive lines that have been drawn in our nation. And we are saying, listen, we stand for all people. We're asking for all people to stand for us right now.
That's right. But you just tapped on something, which is the systemic and generational mindset and oppression that's been going on for years, and what that means. Guys, people are on here standing with us. So I want to just shout out Genel Brown. I kind of want to get back on here because, as you can see, I'm struggling holding the thing. You know, that might be helpful, yeah. But Irma Rios, who's saying, I love you guys. My son is biracial, Puerto Rican, African American. He's 25, and I called him and said, I haven't seen you. And he says, Mom, I'm scared to go out. I'm scared to be a target. So sad. So it's also something we want to talk about as a family. How do we talk to our children about what's going on? How do we prepare our children of color, our biracial children? How do we prepare our children in general? Like Israel just said, speaking about, this is so much better, babe, thank you. Israel was just speaking about his friend calling him and saying, what do I tell my son? I think at this point, I was praying that you guys could see us as a family and recognize how important, how significant it is to explain to your children why Black Lives Matter is a movement, and also that you find it important to have these conversations. They are difficult, they are painful, they are complicated. But I pray that this inspires you and encourages you to have these very real conversations. I have two nieces who, how old are you? You 8?
I'm 8.
How old are you?
I'm 5 and a half.
She's 5 and a half. She wants that half to count. And it's just important. So I kind of wanted my family to talk on just how we are dealing with that as a family. I mean, just recently, Jed is getting to an age where she gets it, you know, where she's starting to understand. It's in simple things like going on roadblocks and hearing racist comments. Like, we just had to experience that, and you guys can talk on that more, just kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, so bear with me because it's pretty kind of a complicated subject when you're talking about how to approach discussing race with a child, you know, much less a black child. And so, you know, the way that we've approached it in our household, and we have the luxury of homeschooling, so we have a little bit more control over the content. You know, for us, there were two significant significant pitfalls that we tried to avoid. The first is in talking about race and teaching about the history of race in this country, is to not unintentionally teach inferiority or insecurity. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how that's come up in a real context. The other part of it is to not make this a black versus white thing, but rather a justice versus injustice thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
in that, with couching it in that context, you're able to shore up in your children the idea that we have and we need you know, white brothers and sisters of all persuasions to stand with us as we face this question of injustice. So for example, you know, maybe this was a couple years ago during Black History Month, one of Jet's friends came up to her and said, did you know that, you know, black people weren't allowed to drink from the water fountains of white people? And it was somewhat, you know, I was taken aback by the statement because I get the intent. The intent was to teach a little bit about civil rights, but the sad part is that if that was the takeaway of that child from that lesson, it's very dangerous, right? Because then the question arises, without context, the question then arises, well, why weren't blacks allowed? And is there something wrong with me? That's the next kind of logical question. And so there's a real pitfall there. And so when we approach the question of race and when we approach the question of civil rights in this country, we couched it in the context of, you know, what?
I think that they were jealous of their beauty.
We're going to keep that in the final cut. So,
With their children, they
yeah,
speak their hearts, they speak their
heart.
minds.
You are beautiful, that's right. We're all beautiful in our own ways, right? So you know, we approached it from basically in history, there have always been injustices perpetrated against people for one reason or another, from the people of Israel and in Egypt to the Native Americans, by the Europeans,
That's right.
to the blacks, suffered at the hands of whites in America. And so when you couch it largely in this context of justice versus injustice, well, then you can have your group of people that stand for justice, which can be of all hues, colors, and backgrounds, and
Yeah.
your people that stand for injustice, and it doesn't become a black versus white thing.
Correct.
And it certainly doesn't become this thing where you need to feel insecure about who you are and feel like there's something inherently wrong with you because people don't like you. It's been happening since the beginning of time.
Or because of your ancestors past, or because of what has happened. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Where you're like, well, this was done to them. Was it done because there's something wrong with us?
Right.
And I think our history sometimes can cause insecurities.
Well, Claude,
and that's the reality of it.
you made an observation earlier
So it's
about
important.
like how that even the history is kind of taught in traditional schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jared and I, we decided to homeschool, and that was a big reason why we decided to homeschool, was because we wanted to teach our kids about their culture, about where they came from. Because Adrienne and I went to public school, and
I did too.
and yeah, you did too,
Same.
and we all went
All
to
of
public
us.
school. But we are taught such a Eurocentric history, and when you looked at the books, there's nobody that resembled, Jared, my daughter,
children.
Adrienne, and
In large part, yeah.
yeah, in large part, yeah. It's far and few in between,
Yeah.
and even now we've made strides, but it's still, when you look at,
Give me an example.
well, even in homeschooling material, it was difficult to find someone that looked like my kids, and we just kept thinking, man, we got to do better. And it's funny because I was telling Jared, and I learned this from what was that?
But,
John Leguizamo.
okay.
Yes.
When he
Latin for more.
Latin history for more.
Latin history for
It's
morons.
incredible if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
See it.
and it talks about
I learned so much from watching
A
it. I
lot.
realized I too was a moron.
yeah. So he said, when you're studying from young, you're taught European fine art at a very young age. They knew, even I knew what the Mona Lisa was.
Yeah.
But you have all these brown and black artists that are so important, and yet when you decide to learn about them, it's because it's an elective, and it's also called folk art.
Yeah.
The difference even in that.
Systemic racism. That's really what what we're really getting down to. And I think it's important so you guys aren't like, well, what are they talking about? It's systemic racism, and it's been happening for years and years and years and generations and generations and generations. And it goes way back to the Mona Lisa, to why that gets put up front versus black and brown art.
Right.
So
Christopher Columbus discovered.
That was a big
the American
thing.
continent.
That's a very, very, we all know that Christopher Columbus was not the
Still taught.
discoverer of America, yet it is still taught.
Rosa Parks sat down because she was tired.
Not
She
true.
was not tired.
no, she was taking a stance for
Yeah.
what was right. She was doing something to go against injustice. And it's just important for us that we raise up a generation that is willing to fight for injustice, that's willing to speak up about it, that is aware of it. A lot of it is awareness. I think there's so many people that just genuinely are so disconnected from what's happened. We had a whole conversation about proximity, and like, if you feel like, well, where is this happening? What's going on? And there definitely are people that are waking up today like, but what is this? What's happening? We want to encourage you to become aware, to make yourself aware. If I get it, if it's not connected to your family, it doesn't affect you, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of it, that you shouldn't educate yourself in it, that you shouldn't care. You should care. I kind of want to see what's happening here. Go, Claude, keep talking.
And I also challenge moms to, whether you're homeschooling or you're not homeschooling, I challenge you to go to your school, to the PTA meetings, to actually pick up, and look at what your kids are reading.
Yeah.
Because it's important to put that very important history in there, so that we're not blind to it, so that our kids know their own history. This is the United States of America, and yet we're only being taught one history,
One perspective.
one perspective.
Yeah.
We're only looking at people that look, let's be honest, like me, like my mom in the book.
Yeah.
And I it's a really important thing, because we are the people that should be guiding what our kids are being fed. And yet I think that a lot of us don't know what's happening. I have friends that were literally taught, and I told Jared this, that still the whole Christopher Columbus thing, and that their kid was taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America, and I'm not joking, that Native Americans are disappearing because of aliens. This was being taught. So people need to, I'm not joking, and this was in a private school.
Have mercy.
So so these are things that we have to, it comes down to the things that our kids as 3-4-year-olds, they're reading, they're listening to, and they're not being taught our history, everyone's history,
Yeah.
as a whole, and there's very little representation, and I think that's so important.
Yeah. I have a question about what's currently happening. Black Lives Matter. Like, I know Jet wanted to do Black Lives Matter on TikTok. Like, she's been asking us about it for a week, and I actually thought it was amazing what you responded with. You wanted to know why she wanted to do it, and that she wasn't just doing it because it was something that was popular on TikTok, but that she actually understood the meaning behind Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually told her that she actually had to do a writing assignment explaining it
Wow.
before she could do it.
And
So-
did you, Jet?
She hasn't done it
that
yet.
she has to do a writing
Okay.
assignment to explain why she wants to do it, and so that's in the works, right, Jet?
Does that count as homework?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
I
it
guess
does.
so.
But
Counts
it's
as homework.
significant, and again, we want to get down
To the core.
to the core of it. You could turn it this way. I feel like we're leaving Papa out. I feel like our lens, but you made us crooked now.
I'm sorry. Hey, that's this.
Christina, I also want to ask if you can send some of the comments to Israel instead. If you can hit Lana and get Israel's number, because we're on my phone right now, so I can't really see the comments. But I do want to read some of them and kind of make this a two-way conversation, so it's just not us talking at you, but that we are actually having a conversation. We had just a simple conversation yesterday. I was on FaceTime with Amanda Seals, and we were having so many talks about this sort of thing. And my niece talked about how someone came on her roadblocks and was saying racist comments. And she came on and explained to Amanda, and what did you say? Why that your character is what? Come, you can come.
My character is
Hold on, I
black.
want you to be on camera.
Oh, go ahead.
My character on Roblox is black, like me, but actually a little darker.
Yeah, because that's what you wanted.
And my character on Roblox is the same color on my skin.
Or so she believes.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? But it's beautiful. It's how they identify, and I think that's amazing. With that being said, what happened?
Well, this girl came up to me and said, because I was playing with my cousin, her character is also black. And
Shout out to Anna.
Anna. And she actually said that, why is everyone so black and it's ugly? But I told her that everyone is equal in their own way.
That's right. And everyone's beautiful, right?
And somebody in Roblox said Black Lives Matter.
Yes, they did. And they do. They do matter.
That's right.
That's so true. So we're just having conversations, and I also think it's important that your children overhear your conversations, because the things that you are saying in your home, your children are sponges, and they're listening to them. So whether they be comments of justice, or if we're gonna keep it real, if they're racist comments, your children are hearing those things, and that is the way that their mind.
All your little N-words.
Yes,
all
they
your little-
hear all of
There's
it.
a black guy, a white guy, and a Chinese
They
guy.
hear all of it.
Yeah.
They hear all of it. So I'm reading you guys' comments. They say you guys are so precious, young ladies, so awesome. But this is what we're instilling in them, that they are beautiful and that everyone is beautiful. And we can do both of those things. We can teach, like Jet just said, everyone is beautiful in their own unique way, and also represent the movement of Black Lives Matter. Literally, you just saw that happen right
That's
here.
right. And indeed, we have a lot of white brothers and sisters.
Absolutely.
Who are standing with
Allies.
blacks. It is not black versus white.
It is
justice
all of us
versus
against
injustice.
racists.
That's
Justice
right.
versus injustice.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let me speak to that, because I was raised in a white family. All of my siblings are white. My mother's white. My stepfather's white. But my parents modeled such a, what I would call a kingdom principle, is that we are all children under God.
Amen.
And it was not a question of blacks need a different type of treatment. No, we need an equal type of treatment.
Yes.
I remember coming home and asking my dad, what's the N-word? And my dad, white guy, red faced, got so upset. He's like, listen, settle that by fighting the next person that calls you that. Hit him right in the face. You have my permission. So I spent a lot of my elementary, junior high, and high school in fights. And I've come to understand that that's maybe not the best way to get things done. So I educated myself, but I appreciated that my parents didn't have a Black Lives Matter, but
There was
to
no
their,
but.
They just said, your life is precious to God. Period.
Amen.
And we saw a comment the other day that said, to our white brothers and sisters, our future livelihood depends upon the conversations that you have with your children about this right now. When I said earlier, when I was talking to my friend, I said, make sure your child, your 16-year-old child, leaves that room after that conversation fully aware of how
right.
you feel. Because if you want to explain to them, this is how I feel about my brothers and sisters in the struggle right now, there should be no room for wiggle. Well, I think my dad feels this, but he added a caveat or an asterisk to, but there's some that are, no. Listen, every life is precious. And I don't understand. Jerd said it best. If you have a problem with the melanin of this statement, it is about justice versus injustice. It is about equality versus inequality. Period. Full stop. End of story.
And somebody said, somebody said, we don't have the luxury of nuance at this moment.
Say it louder.
We don't have the luxury of nuance at this moment. We have to be very clear about what we're focusing on.
That's right.
And why we're focusing on it. And to dilute the message and to dilute the movement with all lives matter, it's just a useless platitude that, is frankly offensive and not useful in the slightest.
Okay, so Jerd.
Yeah.
Jerd is a very accomplished attorney, a very, very learned man.
Learned.
And he is
From the Bronx.
from the Bronx,
From
raised
the
in
Bronx, raised in the Bronx.
So now, instead of people saying all lives matter, okay, because we're getting this now, and it's a valid question. Instead of them pushing back that blatantly, they're going, well, what do you say about the protests and the people looting and the violence that's ensuing as a result of their pain and that sort of thing? Like, because that seems to be the thing. Like, what's your stance on that? Push back on that.
A question before that. Has
Yeah.
anyone died during the riots?
Probably.
Yes.
They have. No, I'm
yes,
just asking.
sorry, people have died. People have been shot by the police. Like, there's this one man that was shot. He was known for cooking. That was in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky. So people have, if I'm understanding correctly, again, I said this was a casual conversation. I don't have all the answers, but people have actually been killed by police during this rioting, and I don't believe that
Yeah, I
people
don't
have
know.
been killed from the looting. But tell me if I'm wrong.
You have to speak up louder because we took the microphone.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, in response to Israel's question, what I would do, I would direct people to the Daily
Both
Show's
sides have died. Got it.
page. Yeah, and I honestly, I really don't think it's kind of besides the point, right? Because Trevor Noah was very eloquent on this topic, and he put it way better than I could ever put it. But he kind of said, in short strokes, he says, the reason people typically don't loot, don't vandalize, and don't commit crimes, in a riot sense, is because there's a social contract. There's an agreement that if we all adhere to the same set of rules, we'll all be treated, fairly and justly. And so when you see George Floyd with a knee on his neck for, nearly 9 minutes,
Correct.
literally with a very, very calm set of police officers observing and or perpetrating at the same time, very calmly, which to me shows that they've done it a million times. When you see that happening, you know, and you kind of know in your soul that this is what they do, and you know it's unlikely that they'll suffer repercussions because that's what's happened in the past countless times, and that's a fundamental breakdown of that social contract. That social contract means nothing at that point. And so if you're gonna point a finger to the looters, and this is what Trevor Noah said, you know, well, I don't know if it was Trevor Noah said this one, but somebody said it. If you're gonna point a finger at the looters, then you better have all other 9 fingers pointing back to America and its systems
Correct.
that have demonstrably broken that social contract.
100%. Say it again.
I said if you're gonna
They
point
are
a
not
finger-
doing this just
Yeah.
because they woke up one day and said, I would like, this is a reaction to years of action. Like you cannot, like I always hear people say, you can't have an action without a reaction.
That's right. Yeah, so
So,
he said it was
Somebody said you need your own podcast.
For sure.
Look at that.
But say that again in your words, how you said it was perfectly.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, the other way he kind of put it, and I thought it was poignant, is that he said, people are asking, well, what does it benefit you to loot Target? And it's sort of a joke in his like comedic sense. He said, well, how does it not benefit you to loot Target? Right? The only reason I didn't loot Target before is because I was upholding my end of the social contract.
Yes.
You
That's it.
guys clearly are not holding up your end of the social contract, so all bets are off.
That's it.
All bets are off.
That's literally.
And
that
by
is
the
it.
way, I'm just to be clear,
We are not saying.
I'm not advocating
At all.
for any sort of senseless violence.
Have some sense
but
while
it's
listening
a very
to this.
important thing that, and this is, I think honestly, this is the fundamental point here. People who are inclined not to be empathetic to the situation, who are inclined to be defensive, who are inclined not to give a damn, will find a reason and something to point to for why things are the way they are.
Correct.
They'll say, well, you don't say anything about blacks killing blacks. That is stupid. Of course we do. And of course it's the
100%.
case that statistically, you know, most white homicides are committed by other whites and most black murders are committed by other blacks. Not the issue, right? But the point is that people who are not inclined to lead with empathy and not inclined to lead with love and with heart will find a reason to deflect and devalue the movement, and they'll point to the looters, they'll point to the useless.
I also think it's incredibly important, sorry, I was getting a phone call, to also clarify that a lot of the looting is happening from people that are not protesters.
Yes.
Protesters are protesting, looters are looting.
Big difference.
Let's clarify that. I think it's incredibly important.
To be clear,
I love
you're
this.
not
Somebody said
promoting
this
violence,
is,
right?
Jerd is
Definitely
not
not.
promoting,
Violence? Okay.
we are absolutely not promoting violence. We think it's important to recognize
love these
that the
chats.
people that are looting are not for the cause. If you are looting, you are not for the cause.
Period.
Okay. I wanted to read this because, oh man, I lost it. I missed what someone was saying, but they pretty much were saying.
So let me reiterate, just because apparently that it's apparent in the comments. In no way am I personally,
No.
advocating for any kind of violence or any kind of looting. I'm just seeking to explain
Yes.
the phenomenon, and that if you're inclined to focus just on the looting, then you have to have a more holistic view of why the looting is taking place.
I don't
That's
know
it.
why the screen is off, guys. We're watching it here and I can see it.
Yeah, the screen is
Oh,
on.
why is that?
I don't know.
How about the audio? don't
Can
need
you
to see
hear
my
us?
face.
Yeah, I think they can.
Do you guys hear us now? I'm trying to, maybe if
Huh? What happened?
am I stuck? No, guys, that's not what it is. He was like, come on. Where is this?
They can hear, they can't see.
The audio is good.
Okay, because I don't really care about the scene. I care about the hearing.
You don't care about the scene, you care about the hearing?
Yeah.
All right, we don't know why.
More from the police brutality. We talking about looting and yet.
I don't, hold
Someone said
on.
that it's a black screen.
Babe, I'm trying, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know why it is that way, guys. I'm trying to,
What happened?
can you guys let me know if you can see me? Babe, can you?
I'm looking, I'm following it, and it's a black screen.
Is someone said?
Maybe jump off and jump back on.
Is
Okay, I'll jump off and attempt to jump back on.
that better?
Every time a call comes in, it's gonna do that.
You can put your